talk a little bit about interactive learning for personalization. So let's take a content scenario. So we have Paul. Paul likes to browse news before he makes his weekly fantasy picks. We've got Susan. On the other hand, she likes to browse business news right before she calls her clients. And the question is, why should these two people with very different interests see the same content, right? So we should be able to personalize for each. And the second question, which comes up very often is, okay, if you're personalizing content that changes constantly underneath your feed, how do you manage that? So a good personalization service is one that is continuously adapting to both content and context changes. Okay, so how do people do this in machine learning land? The most obvious way that is very, very common in folks that do machine learning for personalization is to use a supervised learning paradigm. So for those of you that are not too familiar, in a supervised learning paradigm, you get some training example. You spend X many millions of dollars labeling those things. You shove them into some supervised learner. There are multiple variety of these. And out comes a classifier, which in real time, you can give it a number if you've trained it on numbers. And for a certain amount of accuracy, it will give you that number. That works really well. Supervised learning is really cool. It's what made speech reco, Siri, Alexa, Google Home, all of these things came about from supervised learning. ImageNet, Image Reco, Face APIs, all of these are the results of a good machine learning, supervised learning algorithm. Okay, very good. How about news? What if you wanted to personalize any type of content, such as news, video feeds, playlist, and you're trying to maximize a business outcome? So suppose for the case of this scenario, you're interested about click-through rates. Okay, great. So let's build a supervised learner. You collect some user article click information. You build a feature set, and you learn how to predict a click given a user and an article. And in most companies, you deploy this in an A/B test. Everybody familiar with A/B testing? Yes. And it fails. And the question is, why is my A/B test failing? So what goes wrong? The first thing is Canada interesting to Rafah? Well, if you've never offered me Canadian news on my favorite website, so you have no historical data on me ever clicking on a news article pertaining to Canada, then your supervised learner has never seen that example. So if you're training on historical data, the answer is no. But it turns out I'm Canadian and I follow Canadian news. So you have to have the right signal to get the right answer. It's very important, especially when you're training over historical data. Okay, another thing that goes wrong is when you're creating supervised learning models that are based on historical data. This is real data, by the way, from a partner of ours. A model that's trained day one loses half its value by day two, especially when content is constantly changing underneath your feet. Because again, you're training on historical data, and unless you're continuously relabeling and retraining, those models over time lose their value.